Okay.
There we go. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Neal.
It was a bit of a hectic day. I don't know what's going on with the parking. It took me 30 minutes to find a parking space. A little bit frustrating.
Mhm.
So I'm very happy to be with you
Mm.
at this meeting, and I am a huge supporter of the Genealogy Society. I think it's fundamentally important, particularly at this point in our history in America, to have a further understanding of who we are, where we came from, and how through generation after generation we have we have grown. So this is a project that started a number of years ago uh, in terms of examining the nature of our story from a New Jersey, New Amsterdam, New Netherlands connection. And so I begin it, if we can go to the next slide. I begin it by quoting the late, great Reverend Martin Luther King, who, in his letters from a Birmingham jail, declared that we were here, and that's the nature of the title. On April 16th, in his letter from a Birmingham jail, he said, "We will reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation." I won't read the whole quote, but it's there for everyone to review. Hopefully, this can be sent out to everyone. Normally, when I do these PowerPoints, I don't send them out, but this, and for this group in particular, it's hugely important. So we were here, and essentially, what does that mean? You know, part of the structure of how I got to this point was to take a look at the Declaration of Independence, the New Jersey Constitution, and the other related documents for this period of time. So, and in the center there is a draft of the Declaration of Independence with the scratch outs that Jefferson's and others have made. Uh, and there was a struggle relative to this document and its relationship to African Americans and whether or not we, the people, were we part of we, the people. Uh, so next slide, please. So, you know, this program, and I did this during Black History Month, this program essentially starts with the story of Carter G. Woodson, who himself had a very, very difficult time when he was at Harvard and was lucky enough to find a mentor that enabled him to complete his studies, even though there was a great deal of racism at Harvard. So when I take a look at it, I start with the story of the Dutch. In 1613, a Dutch vessel sailed up the Hudson Bay. And on that ship, as with many of the ships, there were African Portuguese, African Spanish, and related individuals who were sailors. Many of them were navigators, and many of them assisted in the navigation of these ships. So in 1613, there was a gentleman, an Afro-Portuguese gentleman by the name of Jan Rodriguez, who got off the ship, stayed in what would then become New Netherlands, married a woman from the tribal community of Rockland, and uh, advanced himself. So the first African that got here, soon to be African American, if or Afro Dutch, was a free man of color. And he was declared to be a free man of color by the captain, who found that Jan Rodriguez was not doing exactly what the captain had wanted him to do, which was to make some inroads for the Dutch and the New Netherlands. Next slide, please. Part of the story of Jan Rodriguez was that he got here 13 years before the 16 Africans that were brought by the Dutch to New Amsterdam, New Netherlands. And that is important because as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, for our community, this really represents a 400-year celebration of us arriving on these shores. And that's critically important because that community leads to all of the other stories of this period of time. On this particular slide, I wanted to get into the Kingdom of the Congo because the group of folk that came in 1626, they were from the Portuguese that the Dutch had purchased them from, if you can think of it like that. And when they did that, they came from the Kingdom of the Congo. And that's a very unique place in the culture of African history, not only because of its central location, but it's part of that slave trade, enslavement trade, that was fought over by both the Dutch and the Portuguese. The Kingdom of the Congo goes back to the 1300s, and it was an advanced civilization. It had a sophisticated educational system. The people were literate, and the king, or the second king dealing with the Dutch and the Portuguese, King Alfonso I, he was installed by the Portuguese, and he was extremely literate. He translated the Christian Bible into Congolese. He corresponded with the various popes at the time, and they exchanged ambassadors. So in the slide, there's a picture of the King of the Congo being greeted by the various ambassadors from Europe. This gives a completely different perspective on who we were and what the nature of the African societies were. You know, when I grew up, it was always the common reference that, you know, Africa did not have a literary written history or tradition, none of which is true. And so as a part of this analysis, I went into just who these people were and what kind of structure they had. The Dutch importantly took over the port of the Luango River in 1644. And for a time, they had exclusive control over the enslavement trade as it relates to the Kingdom of the Congo, which had gone through a struggle, first with the Portuguese, second with the other kingdoms that were around the Kingdom of the Congo. It's important because when we take a look at the growth of New Netherlands and we focus in on the 1626, the transatlantic slave trade of the Dutch. They're largely coming from this community of folk that had a system of mathematics, that had a system of literature, and had for 200 years been advancing. Can we go to the next slide? So I wanted to demonstrate that by taking a look at the New Amsterdam colonies, which in the map of New Jersey there, you can see how broad the colonies were at the time. New Jersey had a Swedish colony, it had a Dutch colony, and all of them were competing for the land resources that were there. I also put an image of Don Miguel de Castro, who was an ambassador of the Kingdom of the Congo in Europe. And again, this is in 1640. So the story of this unique place, the Kingdom of the Congo, becomes very important as it relates to our understanding of who we were and how we were interacting with Europe at the time. Next slide, please. I think that it's important just to digress just a little bit. You can't see it, but there are a number of books that I would recommend in understanding our history relative to the Kingdom of the Congo. One is written by a Professor Ann Hilton and is entitled The Kingdom of the Congo. And she goes into quite a bit of detail as it relates to the nature of the kingdom and the various kings and princes and principalities. Another is an older book, and it's entitled The Kingdom of the Congo as well. And it was written by Duarte Lopez in 1591. And at that time, he goes into great detail. He was trying to get a sponsorship from the Pope, and he goes into great detail as it relates to who the individuals were. It's oftentimes difficult. To get a clear perspective because, again, there was a lot of racism there. The kingdom was under assault by the transatlantic slave trade, and it went through a period of time where the trade itself was depopulating the land. So in going into this, I concentrate greatly in terms of the story. Another book that is harder to read, actually, is John Thornton's The Kingdom of the Congo. He has a number of articles that traces the history of this region in great detail. One of the things that I did in terms of looking at the study, because this really is New Jersey was a place of contradictions in regards to African American communities as things develop. So one of the digital and possibly if I can get it organized, I scanned a great number of runaway slave notices or enslavement notices. And this is one that I put in that is pre-revolution, 1764, and it's from Monmouth, New Jersey. And one of the things that you get from reviewing the slave notices is how and what people thought of our community. And in a very cryptic form, they go to some detail in trying to describe the persons that had run away. And in this particular instance, it talks about this fellow, and they elaborate and say he can read and write, all right, and that he can play the violin. And it gives us a perspective of the enslavers' understanding of the intellect that was a part of our community. And these notices are hugely important to get a further understanding of these communities. Next slide, please. New Jersey passed its constitution literally 2 days before the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. New Jersey's constitution, the first constitution written on July 2nd, 1776, had a curious provision in there. And that provision was that anyone, men, women, African Americans, African Dutch, could vote. And that's in one of the provisions of it. It granted the right to vote to any person who had the net wealth of 50 pounds. And that included African Americans. And you have to take a look at this, because when I first examined this, there are literally no records of the conclave that put together this Constitution, principally drafted by William Patterson. And in it, he gives the right and franchise to African Americans that had 50 pounds. This is after Lord Dunmore in 1775 issued his proclamation. And this is after George Washington had lost some critical battles as it related to the independence movement. And one of the things that I look at is this right to vote and what that actually meant. You know, there are voting records that are around 1804 that show that African Americans did vote in New Jersey and took advantage of this. This right was stripped from us around 1807 by a statute, and then it was permanently stripped in the second Constitution of 1844. Next slide, please. So one of the curious things about the Declaration of Independence is the slave passage that was embedded in it. And I'll read it and blow up my screen a little bit. I'll read it because it's curiously contradictory. And he is now exciting those very people, talking about us, to rise in arms among us and to purchase that liberty which he has deprived them. Now, he's right that the Declaration is going to King George III, and they are literally blaming the transatlantic slave trade on the King of England, all right, knowing that by this point in time in 1664, the English had taken over New Amsterdam, and it was clearly, we were clearly a British colony at the time. But the audacity to put in the Declaration of Independence of we the people, and then to say that it is not our fault for slavery, but it is their fault. This complete contradictory element that puts the blame of enslavement on King George and the English. Mind you, they didn't proclaim African American freedom at the same time they are proclaiming the rights and privileges of liberty. Next slide, please. So, going back to Lord Dunmore, who in 1775 offered the rights and privileges of freedom to the African Americans that would fight for the British. Now, he was no friend to Black folk. He was no friend to Black folk, but he understood that if you could deprive the colony of one of its principal assets, which were African Americans, that could create a stronger opportunity for the British success in crushing the independence rebellion. One of the points about this is that for this area of New Jersey, Lord Dunmore's proclamation devastated the enslavement community of North Jersey in particular. Next slide, please. So part of it deals with those African Americans that resisted enslavement and went to fight for the British. Colonel Ty and the Black Brigade was one of them. He was from Shrewsbury, New Jersey. He traveled to Virginia and enlisted with the Black Brigade and fought principally in New Jersey and became extremely successful at it. And in this, I put a number of his noted battles. Next slide, please. The June 28, 1778, and the Battle of the Monmouth Courthouse, as it was called, or the Battle of Monmouth, was a critical point in the struggle for both the Loyalists and the Patriots at the time. And even though the battle itself was neither side could claim victory of it, George Washington used it to demonstrate that his forces had a clear opportunity of success. And if you watched Ken Burns's documentary on this, he goes into the Battle of Monmouth, but he leaves out the African American story at the battle. At this battle, you have Colonel Ty, and this was an opportunity for him to prove himself to the Loyalist cause. And he was very successful in capturing a member of the militia, of the New Jersey militia. Also at this battle, you have the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, and a group of mixed soldiers were a part of the 1st Rhode Island. And so you have this clash of both the Loyalists, African Americans fighting for the British, and the Patriots and the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. So the story involves this clash of ideas relative to which side was going to get there first. The image of the Black Brigade has on it liberty for slaves. All right, liberty for slaves. They weren't unambiguous about this. Their participation was for the liberation of their community. And likewise, unlike New Jersey, Rhode Island had a stipulation that if you fought for the Patriots that that was a path to freedom as well. So on both in both these competing forces, you have this clear move for the liberation of the enslaved community. Next slide, please. So one of the critical points is that there was never, ever any greater period of time than the American Revolution for the freedom-seeking African Americans. 3,000 African Americans escaped their enslavement, many of whom were from the Bergen County area of New Jersey, which at that time consumed Hudson County. Next slide, please. So as a part of this movement to freedom, you have this plethora of runaway enslavement notices. And here again, I found it to be rather unique to go through this database relative to our community. And in this particular notice, 1779, the enslaver says that he deserted his master's service and joined Lord Dunmore's upward of 3 years ago. So this fellow, he left. When he found out, he left and joined and to fight with the Black Brigade and Colonel Ty. And it was well recognized by these enslavement notices that this is what was happening. All right, this is why people were leaving. Next slide, please. In this particular one from involving someone from Chatham, New Jersey, this woman, he says in the middle, it says, it is presumed that she is gone to Chatham in New Jersey or else is concealed in this city or someplace near by some free Negroes or others. So from this notice, we get the very clear impression that as a community, there was a certain degree of people working together and participating in the hiding or protecting of the individuals that had abandoned their condition of enslavement. And again, you get so much information from these enslavement notices. Next slide, please. In this one, again, this gentleman had run away, and they describe him as being about 20 years old, and goes into further detail about, well, he plays the fiddle and the French horn. And so there is a level of sophistication that is recognized by the enslaver. They also goes in and talks about another fellow who can read and write, and that oftentimes they include in this that they may be creating false passes so as to avoid the capture of the slave catchers at the time, to write their own protection in a documented form. Again, not part of a narrative that is commonly thought about when we think about this period of time and who these individuals were. Next slide, please. So here again, and I separated the critical parts that were a part of this study, where they indicate that he speaks or talks good English and Low Dutch. Now, this is a substantial period of time after the Dutch had lost control of New Amsterdam um, and this colonial period. But the multilingual nature of the enslaved was had to be recognized by their enslavers and the other parts of the community. The second fellow also talks good English and Low Dutch, uh, as they took with them a number of clothes. Their dress cannot be described. It is supposed their intention is for Staten Island. Now, Staten Island's history relative to this area of New Jersey is almost, the same. Washington Irving, in one of his pieces, wrote about the fact that the Black community of Staten Island, you could literally hear them sing and talk from the shores of our side of the river. A community of folk in this piece, Washington Irving also talked about the fact that individuals would be relied upon to negotiate, and enslaved individuals would be relied upon to negotiate and sell the products for their various individuals, enslavers. Next one, please. So the story of the Black community that had largely gone to Manhattan to escape their condition. This is a well-documented period of time, and the Book of Negroes, as it was called, created a list of the individuals who could leave with the British when they released control of Manhattan. This is, again, a very complicated story because slave catchers were notorious for going into Manhattan and trying to recapture individuals. It was also strongly objected to by George Washington that these individuals could leave with the British. In fact, one of his enslaved women, when she heard of Lord Dunmore's proclamation, went right over to New York. And he was very, very adamant about trying to return these individuals. The complicated story of when they leave and go up to Nova Scotia, and there's a fair number of documents concerning the Black community of Nova Scotia. They were given the worst land. They had restrictions on when and how they could farm, and they had all sorts of racism put against them in Nova Scotia at the time. And a large number of this community petitioned the British government to leave. Many stayed, and there's a nice little museum up there dealing with the African American community of Nova Scotia. But many of them wanted to leave because of the repressed nature of their existence in Nova Scotia. So they petitioned to go to the Caribbean and the island of Jamaica, and to go to Sierra Leone, and they became parts of these communities. Now, an interesting, note is that the military service that many of them had engaged in lead to other events in this larger story, one of which is the Jamaican community of Maroons who resisted their enslavement in the hills of the island of Jamaica. Another is there was a group of French Haitian soldiers that fought at the Battle of Savannah. It was an unsuccessful enterprise, but they then returned, the ones that survived, and are a part of the liberation of Haiti in 1804. So you have this cross current of freedom and the community that was substantially from this area of New Jersey, moving across, the world to other places that then form a basis for a larger story. Certainly, the community of Sierra Leone, that predates the American efforts in Liberia, but there's an awful lot of records associated with the tension that go to how that community integrated itself with the indigenous population and the problems that occurred there. So, in this particular slide, I put some of the land maps and some of the other documentation that were a part of this migration from Nova Scotia to Sierra Leone in particular. Next slide, I think that's it. Yeah, I think this is the last slide. So in summation, one of the things that I think is so critically important is that we go into great depth when we start to tell our story. And it's critical to present that story in the full complexity of who these individuals were, how they survived, what type of circumstance did the Declaration of Independence create, and Lord Dunmore's proclamation, and how on both sides of the equation, the push and drive for liberty was a prevailing factor in the consideration and goals and aspirations of this community. This is probably going to be a little bit of a larger presentation later as we get closer to the July 4th celebration, because there's a great number of stories that are a part of that. And that's my presentation in regards to this matter. Any questions?
Hi, I'll ask that if anyone has any questions, just please raise your hand and we can call upon you. But I have questions. But thanks again for a really robust presentation, because now I have a lot of research to do regarding what you presented.
Okay.
Gene, do you have anything to say?
Excuse me. I just want to thank Neal for this presentation. I mean, it's as Carol said, it gives us things to think about. And it's not surprising that most of what you talked about, I never heard in school. And my objective is going to be to arm my grandson with enough information so he can defend it when he gets confronted.
Well, I think that's important, that particularly with the erasure of our story with the president of the United States, that his clear goal was or is to not tell the full nature of our complex and freedom struggle. And the records are there. one of my goals is to create a digital file of even the enslavement notices, so that people can come to the museum and look at them online. The the nature of how we collect these records has become both easier and more complex, because you have all of these different websites, all of these different universities creating the documentary trail. But in my case, I had to go through, uh, maybe 50 to 100 different sites in order to garner out parts of this presentation.
Wow. Lots of research.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
I note that in your presentation, you were talking about the first person to vote in New Jersey, but
Yes.
and the history that we're getting is the person's name was Thomas Mundy Peterson. Is that
Right.
who you're referring to?
No, no. I think that's after 1865, where he voted in response either to the 13th or 14th Amendment. Uh, isn't he from
He's from
Perth
Perth
Amboy?
Amboy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm talking about an individual, and I have it somewhere in my digital file because I wanted to see, in response to the 1776 Constitution, did any African Americans qualify? And my record shows that two individuals qualified, and they did in fact vote around 1802 to 1804. I'm not exactly sure of that date, but they did vote. And interestingly enough, when I spoke to the state librarian down in Trenton about this, she had said, well, William Patterson made a mistake. He had not intended to enable African Americans to vote. But a professor out of Ohio State University, she did an analysis of the 13 colonies and their constitutions. And a fair number of them did provide the franchise to African Americans and to women. Of course, in New Jersey, that changed. And certainly the 1844 Constitution barred African Americans from voting.
So where did you find the information though for these? Because I'd like to see it.
In terms of which one?
The two people that you said voted before.
I haven't, the difficulty that I have is my digital file is so large.
I know.
I can't find it.
Because even while you were speaking, I looked it up. Like I went on AI and it's still, and I just put in specifically who was the first person to vote in a state election, not federal, but just state. And it
Right.
still comes up as Thomas Mundy Peterson. That's why I was just wondering where the information comes from.
No, this was from a voting record
Yeah, I know. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
that
So where
that
are
I
those
had.
voting records located? I guess I would ask.
Say that again.
Where are the voting records located?
Well, at various different sites. What I'll try and do is dig this out, do a search of my database to see if I can send it to Jean.
Yeah, thank you.
You know,
No, it's just that sometimes there's a lot of misinformation out there, and like you say, you dig deeper, and it's just nice to know what you're
right.
telling.
Yeah. It took a while for me to find that, because I was really caught with the notion that here you did have a right to vote, and did African Americans take an opportunity to do that. And so I have it. In fact, I think it was a husband and a wife that voted, that had the requisite 50 pounds. So I'll try and dig that out.
Any other questions?
I have another question.
Yes, Carol.
Okay, you mentioned one of George Washington's enslaved women escaped, and you weren't talking about the female, I forgot her name, that escaped up to New England, right?
No, I wasn't talking about
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was this person? Yeah. Because he wanted to reclaim all of his enslaved people after the war, right?
George Washington was very passionate about trying to get everyone back.
Right.
This, this took a substantial amount of time in terms of I believe it's the Treaty of Paris that had to negotiate the Book of Negro and the individuals that were going to leave with the British forces. He was very adamant about trying to reclaim people. But the woman that I'm referring to was in direct relation to Lord Dunmore's proclamation. And she went to Virginia. By that point in time, I believe Lord Dunmore was no longer on the mainland, but on an island outside of Virginia at the time. But I don't have a record of her name. I just have a historical reference point about her leaving his plantation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Neal, I want to thank you very much for that presentation. It was fantastic. Uh, and you said we can distribute the slides amongst our body, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure that that gets done.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to make a number of reference points. I'm completing a new exhibit, hallway exhibit it's entitled The Seventh Day. And 7 days prior to his assassination, Martin Luther King came to Jersey City, spoke at the Metropolitan AME Zion Church, but he also went to Patterson and he also went to Newark. It was a blitz of speeches. So I have pulled the various newspaper articles from the local papers to put this exhibit together. And at that time, he was advocating on his Poor People's Campaign, was expanding it to include a multiracial campaign for economic opportunities. And the next thing is, 2 years ago, we had a flood in the African room, and the whole place was destroyed. The flooring was. And I am finishing too bad I can't open the camera to let you see it, but it's really a beautiful room. And I'm working, there are about 30 to 45 pieces of African art in the room, and I'm working on a labeling and history for each piece so that people can look at it and read about it and discover the various groups and peoples of the various communities that, of the 54 different countries of Africa. So,
And I'm sorry, where is this located?
at the museum here,
In
1841 Kennedy Boulevard
Oh,
oh, in Jersey
in Jersey
City.
City.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you could
yeah.
send us a link, we could send that out too.
I have to put it together.
Okay.
I'm not as good as you in terms of the digital aspect of it, you know. But
Neal,
it's, yeah, there are pieces that we haven't put out,
Mhm.
from South Africa, the Ndebele community, to Sierra Leone, to the Congo, to Nigeria, and the Igbo, Ikigbo, and Yoruba peoples. So it's, I'm very proud of the room, you know, and would, invite you all to come and see it.
Is that library open
Yes,
presently? Yes. Oh, okay.
yes.
All right.
Okay, but you'll keep us posted so we can send it to the membership, okay?
Okay.
And my question is this being a genealogical society, do you have any tips about any major research data sets that we should use to help us with our research?
Well, I think yes. Certainly, in terms of the period of time of the Revolutionary War, um, there, the Book of Negroes actually identify a great number of people, and with their names as well. Uh, Also, the muster rolls, the pension rolls. One of the sources that I looked at was the muster and pension rolls, and that went through a various period of time. Initially, it was very difficult for African Americans to claim a pension, and then it was opened and offered to their spouses to claim pensions. And so there are databases that you can take a look at. Likewise, the enslavement notices oftentimes have names or part of a name that can be tied together. There isn't, you know, it's kind of coming together where various institutions are enable you to do a name search. What I was doing my research and how I do it, uh, when you go to the various universities and their special collections, you can get a little bit further in terms of the information. The Meineke Library at Yale has a good source of information. Um, the New Jersey State Library has some good sources of information. What I find is that the further back you go, the more difficult it becomes to identify the individual that you're researching in terms of a genealogical perspective. And but the Revolutionary War muster rolls become an important source of information. It takes time, when you really, one of the interesting aspects of the 1660s and 1664, you find an enormous number of Portuguese sounding names. And Rodriguez, Pedro, and this community that when Peter Stuyvesant lost control of it, they migrated to Old Tappan and that area of lower New York, upper New Jersey. And you can get information from there as well in terms of tracking it. I have collected information from the New Netherlands Society, the New Amsterdam Society, the university in the Netherlands. His name is escaping me right now. And you can get some source, information from these sites. The one good thing about the Dutch is that a lot of times they kept pretty good records of names, baptismal records, it was always tainted because uh, the ministers never believed that the Africans wanted to be a part of the religion. This also goes back to the Kingdom of the Congo, uh, uh, but wanted it as a part of upward mobility. So they always have kind of these snide remarks in them. So, uh, yeah. So, but hopefully, if I get better at my digital basis, I can enable people to not have to go through the ordeal that I had to go through. So,
Thank you.
Hi, this is Dana. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very informative. I have a young grandson, and I hope to be able to share this information with him. And I'm too collecting some historical information. I'm actually the family historian. My question to you is, how do we continue to follow your work? How do we stay in touch with you? And thank you so much for this very informative presentation.
well, I'm trying to put either an Instagram page or website together, um, and because the research that I've been doing has been across uh, many a platform. I have another very, very long PowerPoint that deals with the migration of African Americans to New Jersey and the period of time. I center it around Booker T. Washington's last tour of New Jersey in 1914 and how in what was a marathon, he traveled from as far north as Paterson and then all the way down to south and southern New Jersey. And I put together a enormous database of documents relative to the tour, relative to his influence, relative to how the Black communities of New Jersey were progressing at that time. And it's entitled Between the Wars. So it literally goes from World War I to World War II, just in that parameter of time. And it incorporates a lot of the documents from the museum, just in an instance, the community hospital that was built by an African American doctor in Newark, New Jersey, and my brain is just good, Dr. Kenny. And he built the hospital in 1927, and there was a lot of struggle associated with it. In particular, one of the things that I wanted to learn, and I did find it, was who designed it. And he used an African American to design the Kenny Hospital. And many people may know it because Edward Bowser, a deceased member of your group, that's part of his family record. That it was his great grandfather or grandfather that designed the hospital for Dr. Kenny in 1927. And we have the source material for that. His son would go on to be a celebrated architect of the Bauhaus movement. And he would eventually become an architect. But at the time of 1927, the racism associated with enabling African Americans to be an architect had prevented him from moving from a draftsman status to an architect status. So it has a lot of, really kind of neat stuff that people don't really talk about.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have one last question.
Okay.
Because every time Neal Brunson talks, he's bringing up more questions I have. Anyway, my question is, I know you didn't mention DNA, right? And my question is, have you done any DNA testing for yourself that you can trace the migration of your ancestors? I myself have done testing with with a couple of the different DNA platforms. And so Ancestry, no, I'm sorry, 23andMe lets me know that I have ancestors that migrated to Nova Scotia. So that would likely probably have been during that war, right? But
I
my
would think
question
so.
is, I'm sorry, go
Mhm.
ahead.
I would think so.
Yeah. So have you traced any ancestors migration through DNA?
I have not done that.
Okay.
For my family story, I have a very long lineage on my mother's side to New Jersey. And then on my father's side, I have a lineage coming from South Carolina. And I have gone to South Carolina and found the gravestone of my great grandfather, who was born a slave in 1854, prior to the Civil War, and freed as a result of the Civil War. And I've used the church records of the AME Church to track that, and actually went to the little AME Church because a lot of times the cemeteries are in back of the church, and you can go there and track that.
46 is
So
172.
Okay. What to contact. Okay.
Are there any other questions? Neil, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation. And just so you know, you're going to be on the list for another presentation sometime.
that would be great. I would love to do, I would love to do It's Women's History Month. I've centered part of that Between the Wars exhibit on about 5 to 10 different women from New Jersey, Black women with extraordinary stories. So I would love to do that.
Super.
Yeah.
Duly noted. To finish off our agenda, are there any more professional research or personal research updates? And after hearing what Neil said, we have more work to do. Any questions? Any other business? New Jersey researchers, I'm going to, that being the case, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Have a fantastic month. Bye for now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.